This is the Raising Rebellion podcast, episode number 26.
Welcome to the Raising Rebellion Parenting Podcast, where we will explore how to help kids seek purpose and passion, challenge society's expectations, and avoid a standardized life. Now here's your host, Paul H.K.
Hi, Rebels. Thank you so much for being here. Think back to when you were in high school. You've pretty much been told what to do for your entire life up until that point. At home by your parents, inside the classroom by teachers, then with all of the activities, hanging out with friends. How much time did you actually put into thinking about who you were and how you want to be in this world? In fact, how much do we as adults really know about ourselves today? Well, if you listen to this podcast regularly, you might already know that I'm a big fan of experiences and the tremendous education we learn from them. Today, I talked to Charlie Taby. He's the CEO of UnCollege, a gap year program that teaches very practical, self-directed life skills, empowering students to take control of their own destiny. Charlie's somebody who unknowingly gave himself that opportunity without really realizing it when he couldn't find a job after he graduated college. He lived abroad for a few years and subsequently realized just how valuable those experiences were for him. He now runs a company that works very hard to provide students with the permission to become themselves earlier in their lives and gives them the support to do it. This is a great human being running a great program with great success stories. Really hope you enjoy my conversation with Charlie. Here talking with Charlie Taby. He's the CEO of UnCollege. Charlie, thank you so much for chatting today.
Thanks for having me, Paul.
Absolutely. Okay, if you don't mind, let's start with your background. Can we start with you telling me a little bit about yourself, starting with your childhood, and a little bit about your journey to where you are today with UnCollege?
Sure. Going all the way back, I was born on Long Island in New York, and I went to elementary school and high school on Long Island. And after high school, I went down to Maryland. I went to college at Loyola University, Maryland. Then it was called Loyola College. And when I was there, I was pretty active. I've been active my entire life in a lot of my extracurricular activities, things that I found very interesting for me and what my interests are. And I never really was a big school person, to be honest, but I thrived in all of my extracurriculars. So in high school, I did a lot of National Honor Society or the school newspaper. When I was in college, I was on student government. And I kind of gravitated always towards those things that I really liked. And when I was in the classroom, I found that I was doing a lot of rote memorization and not really enjoying my time the way I wish that I would have, looking back now. Mm-hmm. And while I was at Loyola, I majored in accounting. And growing up on Long Island, living in the shadow of New York City, you really have this mentality that you're going to go to school, you're going to go to college for 4 years, and after you get your college degree, you're going to go work in New York. And after that, you'll work there for a few years. Maybe you'll work on Wall Street, and then you'll maybe one day, if you're fortunate enough, you'll have a house in the Hamptons, and your life is kind of planned out for you, the kind of ladder that you're supposed to climb. Mm-hmm. And when I was at Loyola, I thought, okay, this is my path. This is what I'm going to do. So I'm going to find the major that's going to make me the most amount of money. And that was kind of that's what determined what I majored in. So I majored in accounting, which at the time was one of those majors where you could come out of school and definitely have a job. Right. And I minored in mathematical sciences. I had always been a kind of a little bit of a math nerd. I did a lot of tutoring when I was in high school for pre-calculus and calculus. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't until my junior year of college I decided that I was going to take some time to myself and I was going to study abroad. And as an accounting major at Loyola has one of the best accounting programs in the country, and they are very strict in the sequence that you take courses in. And to be able to study abroad for a semester, I had to stay at Loyola over the summer and take a summer course to be able to fulfill that requirement so that when I returned in the spring, I'd still be on track to graduate in 4 years. Mm-hmm. I'll never forget that summer when I was taking that course. I happened to be on campus housing, and I bumped into this guy in the elevator, and he had characters tattooed on his arm. And I looked at him and I asked, did you study abroad in Beijing? And he said, I did. And I said, that's really cool. I'm planning to do that this semester. And he's like, he just kind of gave this, that's cool. You're going to wind up staying for a year. And, that was met with an equal, I wish I could probably, but I'm an accounting major, so that's actually impossible for me to do. And he was like, all right. And he just got off the elevator. I remember he got up on the 6th floor and I was going up to 8. Mm-hmm. And that really stuck with me because when I went and studied abroad, well, the kicker is I stayed for a whole year. And I really, he was right. And he had a lot of foresight. I should reach out to that guy and let him know that I tell that story often. And, I think what I realized about myself when I was abroad was that there was a lot more to the world than just climbing the ladder. And I fell in love with Beijing when I was there. I fell in love with the challenge of just figuring out how to navigate everyday life, especially since I didn't know any Mandarin. Mm-hmm. And I really found myself pushing to learn something that I really wanted to learn, and that was the language. So fast forward, I went back to Loyola, and because I went about second semester, I had to take more summer courses. Mm-hmm. And I did that going into my senior year so I could still graduate on time, and I did. Mm-hmm. And I kind of forgot. I always had the Beijing life in the back of my head, but I knew, I still am probably going to be an accountant for the rest of my life, as much as that just pained me. But money was a real thing for me, and that's what I wanted. Mm-hmm. And so spring semester of senior year comes around, and I decided to apply to a couple of the big 4 accounting firms, and I didn't get any jobs. And I was crushed. Mm-hmm. And there was the ladder just sawed in half right in front of me. I'm going nowhere. I'm going into the ground. You get feelings that kind of just take you over. And I said, okay, well, now what? And the university that I had studied abroad with in Beijing, they were offering an intensive Mandarin course over the summer. And I said, well, you know what? Now's as good a time as any. So I loved learning Mandarin, so let me go abroad. And I did. And I wound up staying there for 3.5 years. Wow. And so I went to Beijing. I took this intensive Mandarin course, and I said, well, I guess I'll figure it out. I've always been someone who when given a challenge, I figure it out. And I decided I was going to teach English for a little while, do what a lot of foreigners do in China, mm-hmm. and decide during that year whether or not I wanted to go back to school, or if I wanted, for a while I was tossing around law school, mm-hmm. or if I wanted to, do something else. And very serendipitously, I stumbled into a after-school English program, and I started teaching with them for a while. And I was one of the only people on staff that, at that point, was conversational in Mandarin. So I helped them put a management structure together. And after I helped put that management structure together, I kind of rose through the ranks. So I was overseeing the academic team, and then I was overseeing an entire school. And then I wound up going up to do ops for overseeing the entire company. And this was a company that grew very quickly. When I started, it was only 2 centers. And by the time I left, it was 6 in Beijing. And I don't even remember how many in Greater China.
Wow. That was all within the course of 3.5 years?
Actually, it was less than 3.5 years, because I had then left and thought that I would open my own school while I was in China.
Wow.
That was an even shorter period of time, which was really on par with the way everything moves in China. So it didn't seem too out of place to me. I mean, mm-hmm. China is one of those fantastic places that things can happen so quickly. I mean, they know how to move. They are in that mindset. They run. They're always running. Mm-hmm. So I was kind of in it, and I really fed off of that energy. I mean, thinking about my former self and how I always wanted to live in New York City. New York City gives you that same exact energy. There's a reason why they say it's a city that never sleeps. Yep. Beijing is very similar, and it didn't matter whether or not, you were being challenged on the bus earlier in the day, or you saw the skyscrapers going up, or the different types of international cuisine that was coming into the city, it was just always firing on all cylinders. It was always awake, and it was really energizing for me while I was there.
Yep.
And so I did that for a little while, and then I decided, okay, I'm going to see if I can open my own school here. And that proved to be pretty difficult as a foreigner. And so after a few tries at that, I decided to let that one go. And I was back home I was in New York for one summer, and I had opened up a magazine and saw that there was this different type of school in Silicon Valley that was for entrepreneurship. And what was really fascinating to me was when I was thinking about opening my own school in China, it was going to be geared towards K-12 learning. And I really wanted to take the feedback that I had gotten from a lot of Chinese parents who were saying that what they wanted their children to start learning was these critical thinking skills that they felt they could definitely improve in their children's education. And I wanted to get a little funky with that and what that meant. And there was a lot of new models that were coming out. This is right around the time that MOOCs were coming on the scene and blended learning. So I thought, okay, why don't I try to inject some of that into this, English learning curriculum? And so when I saw this school in Silicon Valley, I thought, wow, here's something also interesting. I mean, I remember the centerfold. There's people jumping into a pool. They sit in beanbag chairs for classes, and you learn how to build a business. And something struck me about it. And I looked in the bottom right-hand corner and said, applications due, I think it was August 5th. And of course, the day that I was reading this article was August 5th. So
of course,
I said, you know what? I'll email and ask for an extension. And if I get the extension, I'll apply. And if not, I tried.
Right.
I emailed and they said, sure thing, you have the extension. So, I stayed up all night, wrote this huge application. I remember I wrote this really long story, which in hindsight I probably didn't have to write, but that's okay. And I got into this school. I went to Silicon Valley. It was really my first time on the West Coast. I was totally ill-prepared, thinking, California is hot during the summer. It's not hot during the summer, not in San Francisco. There was a lot of learning curves there. But I went through this 8-week program where it was really a soft landing into Silicon Valley and what the world was like. What is it like to build a startup? What is it like to have people around you who really want to change the world for the better? And I began to become very familiar with the guy that ran it, and he's one of the more well-known venture capitalists here in Silicon Valley. And over the course of my time while I was there, I built out a business. I was trying to figure out if there was a way to have Google for Education where you would be able to search for something that you might find interesting, and that could be a boot camp or an article, but you'd be able to filter it so you wouldn't have a lot of the noise. And I pitched that idea, and at the end of it, Tim had said to me, hey, I'll either invest in this or you can come work for me. And I thought, well, it's probably good to have a billionaire on your side. So I did that, and I started working for him, and I did that for almost 2 years. And towards the end of that, we did a show on ABC Family for an entire season, which was really cool, trying to mesh education with television, and definitely not for the faint of heart, I will say. Definitely challenges there to make something interesting. Building a business can be very dry at times. So, learned a lot during that process. And then I took some time off and did some internal conversations with myself. And then I was approached by one of the investors of UnCollege. And he said, hey, listen, they have this role that's open, and I think you could be a really good fit. Will you consider it? And I went on the company's full team retreat, and I loved the team. And when they were talking about gap years and, self-directed learners and people who really are pushing for themselves, and there's this intrinsic motivation, I realized that I never had words to apply that to myself, but I had really done that almost my entire life. I mean, I wasn't that stereotypical student who thrived in the classroom and thrived outside of the classroom. I didn't thrive in the classroom at all, but that didn't mean that I wasn't good at things. But I realized that a lot of people, that's the metric that they use, that's the credential that they use to determine whether or not you're valuable. And there had been, at that point, two times in my life, and I mean in my adult working life at that point was, 6 years, I had already taken essentially a year and a half off between, in that 6-year time to figure out who I was and what I wanted to do in my next step. So I had these like baked in gap years without really understanding that they were baked in.
Right.
And I thought, wow, what would my life be like right now if at 17 years old, before I even went to Loyola, when I graduated that Catholic high school, if someone had sat me down and said, take some time for yourself, figure out who you want to be and what you want to do, where would I be right now? And that kind of opened my eyes to how cool gap years are and why every student should take one before they go into college.
Yeah, totally. Oh no, go ahead.
That's it. That's the from start to finish. That's where I am right now.
Okay, that's an awesome story. Why do you think you chose? First of all, why do you think you chose China? What was the attraction to China? Just out of curiosity.
Interesting. So actually, when I was a kid, I with my dad, we took Taekwondo classes for Korean martial arts, and so I started with a little bit of Korean when I was a kid, and I think that Asian languages always were very interesting to me. And when I applied to college, my reach school was Cornell, and Cornell at the time had just piloted a program for a whole bunch of Asian languages. I thought, wow, if I could get into that program and study Korean, it would just be so awesome. When I was going to school, this was right around the time when China was on the map, and people were starting to talk about it more and more and how it was going to become a world power. And that's why when I went into Loyola, I had already been able to test out of my Spanish requirement because I had taken that all of high school. And so I had these classes that I could take, and I thought, well, Mandarin seems cool. Why don't I try Chinese? I mean, how hard could it be? Which it's very hard. But yeah, so I had actually taken some courses in Mandarin, and then when Beijing got the Olympics, I just thought, wow, this would be awesome to study abroad during the Olympics, and I did. So I went for it, and yeah, that's why I picked Beijing.
Very cool. Now, I've actually been fortunate enough to travel to China on several occasions, and I'm right there with you. The energy is so high. Even when you go out to the remote areas, like I was working with a lot of factories at the time, but still, it's just nonstop moving. Everybody's getting stuff done. Pretty incredible how that country functions when you're in there just observing. It's pretty intense.
For sure.
Yeah. So, did you have when you planned on going to study abroad for 6 months, you end up staying for a year. Did you get any kind of feedback from, parents, friends, teachers, anything saying, what are you doing? What are you doing? You need to come back and get back to your studies over here. Did you have any of that?
So, I think at the time, I remember something very distinctly. In the same way that I wanted to be an accountant and work at the Big Four and have this name recognition, I remember as a junior, I was thinking about, well, what if I transfer? And what if I transfer to a better school now that I have some of these, some of these fundamentals under my belt. So actually the conversation kind of pivoted. My parents were very hands-off in raising me. Hey, Charlie, if you want this, go figure out how to do it. I'll never forget, I tried to get into an AP history class at my high school, and I had like a 92 average and you needed a 95 average to get in. But there were plenty of students that had a 90 average that were getting in because mom and dad were calling for them. And my parents were the parents that said, we will absolutely not make a phone call for you. Go and make your own case as to why you need to. So that's a very good insight into the type of parents that I had. It was, we have your back, but we're not doing it for you. I
like it.
Yeah. So I was trained from a very young age, when you want something, go get it. And if you have an idea of something, you can try and convince me. And that was everything from when I wanted a cell phone, how I had to present that I wanted a cell phone to my parents when I was in 9th grade. Right. All the way to when I, fast forward to when I was studying abroad, I actually had applied to transfer to Georgetown. And, I remember the look on my dad's face, like, Charlie, holy hell, another semester of college. Like, seriously, another semester? Do you know how much this costs every single semester? And, I have to say, for most 18-year-olds, I don't think that we do have an idea of what $40,000 is. But when you get into the working world, you're like, wow,
right, that's
a lot of money for 1 year.
Right.
So I now I can relate to that face and all of that that he had when we spoke to each other. But they really, at the end of the day, I think they just wanted to be supportive. So it was, whatever you need to do, go and do it. And we'll be here and we'll support you. So I actually had some great parents in that sense.
Yeah, that's awesome. I think that's probably a pretty great transition into UnCollege. Essentially, I think that's what you are helping your students do, is to really take more charge of their learning, of their future, whether they want to go to college or not, whether they want to become an entrepreneur, just taking more charge of their own destiny, which I love. Can you give our listeners a little bit of an overview and a summary of UnCollege?
Sure. So UnCollege is a gap year program for students in between high school and college. And we run this program. It's a 9-month program that is split into 3 phases. So first, the student goes abroad. And while they're abroad, they're participating in a service learning project, anywhere from environmental conservation to women's empowerment to teaching English in one of the 5 locations that we have right now. Those locations are India, Tanzania, Indonesia, Mexico, and Peru. And during that phase, we like students to really start to challenge themselves on that, that core belief of, who are you? And why are you doing some of the things that you're doing while giving back? So, going back to that idea of when I first landed in Beijing, and, it's very different, right? I mean, it's not comfy, cozy home. And that's anything from you not being able to speak the language all the way to the different customs that you're in somebody else's home now.
Yep.
So we want people to start understanding that, all the while starting to reflect on who they are as people. So we have a curriculum that's laid over those first 3 months, when the student is starting again to ask those harder questions about themselves, the who am I questions. And then from there, the student goes into our second phase, which we call launch. And that's when they start to build really a portfolio that we know will start to show who they are as people. So we have them go through workshops, meet with mentors, build a network, and they live with all of their peers for those 3 months in San Francisco. And we start to see with this phase, really, we assign them a coach who works with them every single week. And that coach really is their accountability buddy that's helping them look at larger goals and break those down into smaller goals and push them. I mean, again, asking myself, where would I be today if at 17 I had someone who was on top of me asking me, the harder questions, when, instead of slacking off and sleeping in and skipping class at Loyola, sorry, mom and dad, for all that money that I probably wasted for the class that I skipped, right. Starting to ask these really hard questions of, listen, you can do what you want to do, but what does that mean? It doesn't mean that it's just going to come to you. You have to work for it. And so during that phase, that's when they start to really realize, what do I want to do? And how am I going to put that into practice every single day that I'm in this phase? And then the third phase they go into is their internship. So based on what their interests are during the second phase, we help them find an internship that they can be at for 3 months. And we're really looking to help them gain a lot of professional experience and continue to build their portfolio. Some students will pursue a project, so they will, so we have a lot of artists that come through our program, and they will work on whatever their art is for a couple of months. And they might be supplementing that by, working a 9-to-5 job that if you're an artist, you're working at a sales job. So you're learning these complementary skills that you might need, or you're just gaining that professional experience, because some people do have 9-to-5 jobs that they're not in love with, but they have passion projects on the side that they are. And that's also okay. So really during that internship, we want to make sure that they're gaining that professional experience and developing a professional network by the time they're finished with us.
Right. I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's it.
Oh, okay. I love the progression. When I was reading about the phases that your fellows go through, I just thought, wow, it's really a great sort of umbrella and steps that you take and things to think about with support along the way. I just think the structure of UnCollege is fantastic. When I was watching some videos, right, when doing my research, and the fellows that were being interviewed, they all seem to have kind of a common denominator of maybe having the realization that they didn't want to just jump right into college just because, And to me, at 17, that's a pretty big, courageous decision to, swim upstream with tons of pressure that these kids have from all their friends, saying, I'm going here, I'm going there, and their parents saying, you got to get into this, you got to get into that. What do you think are some of the common characteristics that your students have that you think brings them, to that decision and, some to eventually come to UnCollege? What do you think?
So I do think that there are a couple of different types of people that come. One type is definitely the student who doesn't feel that they are prepared for school yet. So there's a lot of data out now that says how many people just don't feel like they're socially or emotionally prepared. There's a lot of students that feel that they're not personally ready to hack it in college. Like they think that the stress of it will just crush them. I think that that's one type of student where they're like, do I need one more year? Like I've gone through high school for 4 years. Do I just need to take a breath? And those are typically those super high achieving students who felt like they really pushed themselves throughout the 4 years. So we do get a fair amount of those types of students. And then there are the students who are wondering, okay, university is a very, very, very big investment,
right?
In terms of time and in terms of money. And before I go and I do this, which they hear all of these statistics of if you graduate university, you're going to make more money than your non-university degree peers. If I do this, is it going to be worth it? Am I going to get what I want out of it? And so they want to just take a step back and go in and basically have laser focus once they get in. So we do have some of those students as well. And we do have a lot of people who, quite frankly, are just lost. They don't know. They don't know what they don't know. And a lot of them feel that they just don't have enough confidence to be able to take that next step. And for us, we're starting to pivot on how we feel about just training people for university versus training people for the world. And we do think that we want to be the foundation before whatever your next step is. And basically that's confidence and clarity around anything. So you might have the student who wants to go into university. And for some color here, out of high school, there's about 3.5 million students who graduate high school every single year. And 2.5 million of them are going on to college, and the remainder are not. And they're not going to college for a myriad of reasons, but they are either going into a career or they are starting a job or an entrepreneurial project. So what we're looking to do is say, okay, out of these 3.5 million students, how do we help as many of them as possible? And what we do think is a common denominator throughout all of that is giving those students, those 17, 18-year-olds, the confidence and the clarity that they need to be able to get to their next step.
I mean, to me, it seems so complementary to college. I mean, really, it feels like your program, other gap year programs, other great schools, Wayfinding Academy, what a lot of these folks are doing is that taking the time and giving these students permission to really think about themselves, about what they really want, as opposed to what they just pretty much haven't had a decision about for 17 years prior, right? What do you think is, I don't know, do you think anything would change in the college model, that could help kids get to that place to help them start thinking about those kinds of things? Or do you think currently in the college model is pretty much just cranking them out?
I don't think that it's cranking them out at all. I do think that a lot can be done to help supplement what colleges are doing. What colleges are really good at is teaching deep in the tea, right? They're good at teaching content, and they're really good at, researching it and then figuring out the best ways to get it across and for people to understand it. I don't think they're as good as helping people wayfind. I don't think that that there are some schools that do this really well that have dedicated resources to this. But when we take a step back and we look at a high school student who has gone through 4 years in a hyper-structured environment, they wake up every day at 7:30, they're in school by 8 o'clock, they are in 40-minute, 50-minute periods all the way until 3 p.m., they leave school, they do an after-school activity, they get on the late bus, they go home, they eat dinner, they do their homework, they go to sleep, repeat. For 4 years. Like, just understand someone is holding their hand every minute of the day, every minute of the day. And then we get them to university where they maybe have 4 to 5 classes a semester. They have all this free time, and no one has ever taught them how to live without structure. We haven't done that. There's been no training on that. So I find it a little appalling how everyone says, I cannot believe that, freshman retention right now in this country is like hovering around 70%. Like, that's the national freshman retention. And graduation rates for 6 years is like 60%. It's like, why is this happening? Well, what if we took some time and said, hey, you're about to go into this really awesome world. Everybody you meet is going to say it's the best 4 years of your life. Nobody's prepared you for the best 4 years of your life, but we want you to take advantage of the best 4 years of your life. And how do we do that? So I do think that universities, and some are doing this, they're starting to do full freshman year programs where students as a group, as a community, have this sense of belonging with the people that they're with. And they also get different types of advisors for different things. Meeting with an academic advisor once a semester is not enough, especially for the student who has no idea what they want to do with their life. Like, it's not enough. We need to get them more coaching. We need to get them into these programs that allow them to see, okay, I actually thought that I liked this, but I did an apprenticeship one summer, and there are some fantastic programs that some universities do across the country where the student has to do one internship every single summer from freshman year all the way through graduation, that they get to see, is this something I want to do? It's not, this isn't a 6-month thing that you're going to think about. We're talking about the rest of your life, and how do you want to really set yourself up for success in that way? And I know that we're moving towards a model now where we are, we have a lot of millennials who are doing jobs for 2 or 3 years. We don't have a lot of lifers anymore. But we are, what is the purpose of university? And this is a huge divide right now. Half of the people who you survey will say the reason for going to university is to get a good job. And that's parents and students. That's what they're saying. And then there's some university people who are saying the reason why we go to university is to learn how to learn. And it's just these polarizing schools of thought that are trying to work together. So I don't think that universities really, I don't think that, they're just like, okay, well, you know what, we're just going to do it the way we want to do it. I do think that they're trying to innovate. And I do think that where they could get some help is by getting some of these programs in beforehand that give students these foundational skills. And that can be, professional skills. That can be what we call power skills, so critical thinking and effective communication, to set them up for success, to learn how to learn. So then when they're ready to go and get a job, they are ready, because no matter what job you put them in, they most likely will succeed.
Right. It's what do you think to talk about sort of the parent viewpoint on that debate? What do you think is the hesitation there? Of course, I want, if society judges us, first of all, they judge us on whether we went to college in the first place. And then they judge us on, okay, well, if you did go to college, which college did you go to? Right? And if it's a name college, if it's a brand name college, then all of a sudden you're elevated into this mystical, invisible kind of, platform where it's like, wow, you went to whatever. But I mean, do you think it's a fear that parents have, that it's more of a fear, like if they don't go or if they don't get into whatever school, that, they're worried about what their child, might end up doing if they don't? Or what do you think that is from a parent perspective? Do you have any feedback from some of the parents of your students at all or anything?
So I don't have too much data on this, and I can obviously hypothesize. I'm not a parent myself.
Yeah.
I will say that for the parents that I do speak to, a lot of them ask me, if my kid takes a gap year, are they never going to go to school? Mm-hmm. And you can see that there's this real fear. And when I try and think about some of the students that we have, like you said, this is a societal challenge that we have right now. And it has been baked in that you must go to college, otherwise you are going to be left behind.
Right.
And I think that we've got some real key players, especially employers, that are coming out now, and they're saying, actually, there is no correlation between a university degree and whether or not you're going to be successful at our company, mm-hmm. which I think is a really good start, right? Because if parents are saying university is to get a job, and the job market is saying, actually, this has no bearing on whether or not your child is going to do well at our, in this very specific or particular job, mm-hmm. that the conversation starts to shift a little bit. Yeah. And you start to go back. And I think that what we're going to see is a lot of people are going to start focusing on these power skills, these skills that everybody needs to be successful. Empathy, teamwork, communication, critical thinking, and less on the boot camp side of learn this very specific skill and that will make you successful.
Right.
Instead, I do think, we hear about automation, in Silicon Valley, it's like these buzzwords that are thrown around all the time. Uh-huh. But this is what we're faced against. The rest of the country really feels like, are we all going to be left behind? Like, what's going to happen to all of these jobs? Right. And I really do think that, for me in my life, I'm not fluent in any specific trade, but I do know, like, what my parents did give to me from a very young age was how to think for myself. Mm-hmm. And that's why when I am challenged with something, I do think that I can work my way through it. I understand how to lean on my network for help. I understand how to be introspective and think through a problem that I have. Mm-hmm. So, and I think that more and more we are going to see that people are going to realize that these are really important skills. And some employers are coming out now and saying, hey, you can do a boot camp or you can go, to this very specific program. But our hiring managers are now saying that this is not, we're still left with a lot of training that we have to do because really we can train them. That can always be trained. A job can always be trained. But learning how to think and learning how to learn is something that takes a long time to work on. So if we go back to the original purpose of university, I do think that we will see that students will be able to succeed, especially now with these 21st century jobs that we have and the bouncing around. It doesn't really lend itself to just learning something very specific, and that unless you want to stay there, for 20, 25 years. Right. But if we are moving into the model of, you're doing something for 5 years and then you're working on something that's, maybe it's always tangent to what you previously worked at, or maybe you hop around. If we're moving in that direction, why don't we just teach people these executive functions that will make them successful no matter what?
Yeah, such an interesting perspective. I love it. Okay, talking about some of these real life skills, I think one of the subjects you guys teach, correct me if I'm wrong here, is something called rejection therapy. Did I get that right?
You got it right.
Oh man, you got it. I love that you teach rejection as a class. Tell me a little bit more about rejection therapy.
Yeah. So rejection therapy actually began with a guy named Jia Jiang who overcame his fear of rejection by getting rejected once a day for 100 days in a row. Mm-hmm. He did a TED Talk, right? Yes, he did a TED Talk. Yep. Right. Exactly. And what he found, and I mean, you watch this TED Talk and you read this blog, and it is just it's fascinating. And he does everything from asking someone out on a date to asking if he can be a model in one of the models at Abercrombie & Fitch store. I mean, the guy he goes for it, right?
Right.
But, it's interesting what had happened in his brain at that point to say, wow, can I do anything? Like, what happens when we are less fazed by the possibility of hearing no? Are we more willing to try new things? And so we teach that to our students. We have a course that, that they go through, and they actually go out into San Francisco, and for 2 hours they have to get rejected as many times as possible. And, the stories that they bring back are always fascinating. People will always get free burritos at Chipotle. Some people, ask strangers if they'll hold their hand in the crosswalk, or challenge people to a push-up contest in the middle of the street. Some things that, probably, hopefully our insurance provider isn't listening right now.
Right.
Losing their mind. But, they go out, and what we've realized is, what happens when that happens to you? And when we started to teach this workshop here, I now, whenever I travel, I always ask for a seat upgrade. And you realize, well, what's the worst that can happen? Somebody says no. Mm-hmm. Like, that's it. Like, that's the bottom.
Right.
And you see this shift in people, that they realize, wow, yeah, what am I capable of here? Like, if the worst is no, and, maybe there is some embarrassment there, but if you can get over that embarrassment and it's just a no, and you boil it down to that, how do you start to live your life?
I love it. You're not going to find a rejection course anywhere else.
I mean, it's something that, as we start to shift and think about who we're working with, we're wondering, like, does the word therapy just make people like, oh my gosh, no, I can't do therapy. That's not what I do. But, like, getting out of this stigma that, rejection is bad. It's like, rejection is going to happen to you in your life. And it's, how do you build up this sense of resilience?
Right.
How is that taught to young people? And I, again, with my own life, I just see how many times, whether it was, no, you're not going to get into this AP class, even though you fought for yourself. No, we're rejecting you from Georgetown. No, you didn't get your job with the Big Four. No matter what it is, like, they hurt a lot. Mm-hmm. But if you wallow in it and just sit and do nothing, I can see why people just don't move. Like, right. They become, they feel totally deflated. Their confidence just goes totally through the floor. And it's an awful feeling to have. And no one should have that feeling, because more likely than not, you might have caught someone on a bad day, or you were maybe a little too early or a little too late to the party. Mm-hmm. But a lot of it sometimes doesn't have a lot to do with you. And so getting rid of that personal and instead putting it on the, hey, what can I do to be better next time, really, I think, helps, boost your confidence, definitely makes you a lot happier. And surprisingly, you get a lot of free stuff out of it.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's like you teach very practical skills, and you're supporting your students to explore themselves as much as possible, right? You kind of give them the framework, you give them the support, and then really it's like, okay, now go try this out, go do it, right? I love the 3 pillars that UnCollege is built on. Curiosity, creation, and self-advocacy. I think those are, 3 things that all students could really just benefit and gain greatly from. Do you want to talk about the 3 pillars a little bit?
Sure. So our curriculum is based, like you said, around these 3 pillars, and so we try to weave that into every class. So we really think that since the base of our program is about self-directed learning, right? So we teach these workshops that are very surface level, but they are supposed to invoke some type of like, whoa, this is kind of a cool subject and I want to learn more about it. Mm-hmm. And if you want to learn more about it, like, take the time and just learn the shit out of it, like, do as much as you want. And if it's not for you, then maybe the next one will be for you. And maybe if not that one, the one after that. But you'll find something that is for you. You'll find something interesting. We really believe that. But we think that you need to have, like, the only way to learn something really, truly, and really deeply is to be really, really, really curious about it.
Yep.
Yeah. So that's a lot of our courses. That's why they're built in these 2-hour workshops instead of, a semester-long course that, might be about one topic, where after a while, after week 1, week 2, you check out and then you just rote memorizing. So we want to be, we're very cognizant of that, especially for this age demographic.
Right.
And then the creation piece, we think that when you've really mastered something, you can see a lot of people that have done some work on this, they start to create. They start to look at something, and I think artists are a good example of this. I mean, whenever you have someone who starts off, they probably some scribbles on a piece of paper. And then they continue to work at it. And thinking about Malcolm Gladwell's 10,000 hours, putting some real time into something. What happens when you get over that? Again, also that, a little part of projection therapy there, a little different, but what it will look like what your work will look like and what that means to create something and just get it out there. And we really, then the creation part is we want these students to come in and just feel like they're empowered to build or to do or to create. We do have, like I said, we have a lot of artists that it's amazing to watch them over 10 weeks go from one skill set all the way through to another. So the creation part for us is really about that mastery function. And then we want them to get over the rejection of whether or not the world is going to accept it. And so that's why we have them then advocate for themselves. So really, after they've created this really awesome thing, getting it out into the world, raising their hand and saying, I made something. What do you think? And it's really good for us to go to our peers and ask, hey, what do you think? What do you think about this? I mean, and this is good in your professional life. We have these peer reviews every once in a while. What are my blind spots? How do I get better? But constantly figuring out, how are you going to push yourself? How are you going to get better? How are you going to level up? And we do think that all three of these things together are really what the full package is, wherever you go, as long as you are curious about something, you are willing to, get your hands dirty a little bit and create something and then say, hey, I made something. What do you think? How do I make it better? That goes back to no matter where you go, if you have these skills, you're going to be successful.
Right. Those are great. Now, do you guys find out ahead of time what areas your students, your fellows are going to be interested in? Because I know you help, facilitate and support all kinds of different topics and different things that they're interested in, right? Do you guys know ahead of time? How often do you know ahead of time so that you can prepare?
We don't know ahead of time.
Wow.
We don't know ahead of time. Okay. And that's definitely, that's one of our biggest challenges, but also one of the things that I think makes this job really cool because, one cohort, you might have a glass blower. One cohort, you might have someone who wants to be in marketing. We have someone in this cohort who's making escape rooms. It's just,
awesome.
It's this awesome, just this cosmopolitan, diverse group of students who are just jamming on their own things. And that's the coolest part. It's not, no one's a drone. No one is just going through something just to go through it. Our whole goal is get off of autopilot. Get off. You have been in that for a lot of your life. We're done with it.
Right.
If you take control of your own life, you are the person that is going to steer it in a direction. And we want you to feel empowered to do that, to step on the gas, to step on the brake whenever you want. This isn't about other people. So we really, it's hard, I will say, to have sometimes, especially because they have that first phase and they're saying to themselves, okay, phase 1, I'm thinking about who I am. And you might have the person that's coming in, a younger Charlie, I want to be an accountant. And he comes out and he says, I want to learn Mandarin, after he volunteered in Beijing. I mean, this is what it is. So that's why we don't ask a lot of those questions up front, because we know that most likely it will change. And our message there is, it's okay if it changes. It's okay if it changes when you're in our second phase and you're in week 8.
Right.
It's okay. You're 17 years old. You have the rest of your life ahead of you. Don't get caught up that you need to take a test or put down on paper a major, and that's going to lock you in for the rest of your life. That's terrifying. That is not the message that we should be sending to any young adult. Zero. So I think we're more of again, we want to be able to build up that confidence in them that no matter what it is that they do it well. And people will start to look at you and start to say, hey, join my team, or hey, I'd love to commission you to do that. Whatever that might be for that specific individual, we just want it to be really a lot about confidence and clarity.
Really fantastic. So when these students come to you, they've gone through 17 years of, just like you were saying, right? They have 17 years of being told what to do, and they're in this box. They're taking the steps that they're supposed to do, right? When they come to you, how much conversation or coaching do you do around, I know everything about UnCollege is to get out of that mentality, but do you find any challenges or struggles with regards to your students? They just keep going back there and feeling like they're going to be judged, and, what's society going to think about this or that? You have any kind of hurdles to get over?
I definitely think that the hurdles are there. There's definitely a few students who, will, once they go back into college, we see that a lot of the gap year data that's come out, that will have higher grades, they're less likely to transfer, they're more likely to graduate in 4 years. But that's all true. But from afar, we do see that some of them have, I don't want to say relapsed, but they have gone back into this kind of, what they were used to. But I would say a majority of them have realized that, again, this isn't about other people. And we have awesome coaches here. We have really awesome coaches who work really deeply with the students, especially on out their emotional intelligence level, for figuring out, like, what are the best tools to manage this. And, we do the same curve, when you study abroad. There's this curve when you come back, and it's, I feel great, I feel awful, and what that journey looks like. And we think that there's a similar re-engagement into the real world, quote unquote, after the students go through our program, because it's different. I mean, it's very different. And similar for, I think, most places you are in life, high school, college, afterwards can be a little bit of a shock. So we want to make sure that that's managed, and that's why, we do the coaching throughout the internship, because we do want to offboard all of the students in a way that they feel that they're still supported and they still have a network of people that they can reach out to. We're big community people. So after the students leave, we make sure that we're still reaching out. Right now, we're starting to build out our alumni network. But just knowing that you have someone else that's there that has gone through this, we think can be super powerful. But I will say that I think most of our students do well in understanding this is about me. Again, we had that at that point. We've spent 20 weeks, 30 weeks with them, and they have. I will say that I think that we've done a good job in getting them to that place where they feel confident enough to take that next step.
Mm-hmm. That's really great. I was watching some videos and some interviews with some of your coaches, and they do indeed sound and look like they're just awesome, just overly positive people. People that you'd want in your life. It was really great to watch that, and also some videos of some of your fellows who were giving these 3-minute presentations about themselves. It looked like it was maybe end of term, and they were talking about their experiences at UnCollege and stuff that they've accomplished. And you see one kid who just starts choking up, and I think he was designing video games. It was something that he wanted to do forever, and he finally felt like he had that permission and was able to really feel like he was on that path to go do that. So that was really cool to see. What do you enjoy most about UnCollege and what you do at UnCollege?
I think what I enjoy most is giving young people a sounding board, permission to be themselves. And I think it's a really important message that we as a society need to start sending kids earlier and earlier, giving them the agency to make their own decisions and not just having them feel like they have the weight, that they have to carry the weight of the world. Mm-hmm. I think that we haven't really done that great of a job. And if we could allow people to just be themselves earlier on in their lives, like what great things would people do? And that young man that you're talking about, his capstone presentation, it was a love letter to himself. And that was the first time that was my first cohort actually, was with UnCollege. And that just brought me to tears in the back of the room. Mm-hmm. Because, if any of your listeners, you should definitely go and watch it. And it's watching again, this young man who's he realizes who he is.
Yep.
And, for anybody listening to this, do you know who you are? Like, have you stopped and asked, who am I and what do I want to do with my life? Have you done that yet? Have you thanked yourself lately? What do you do every day? Why do you do it? Again, get out of that mentality that you have to do something. And I will say that, I'm very privileged to sit where I am, and I've had a lot of experiences I know that I would not have had if I didn't have a really great family who afforded me all of these experiences. And I know that some people are in places, a lot of where I am today is because of luck. I will say that for people who wake up in the morning, giving that extra thank you to yourself, it really goes a long way. And we start to see the students when they do this, it's a whole mindset shift. You go from this fixed mindset of this is who I am, this is what I'm always going to get in my life, to this growth mindset of I can do it. I know I can do it. And how people kind of break out. And when they break out, it's really, the possibilities then become very endless. So I think the shorter answer of what I enjoy the most is just helping people out. That's really, I'm not doing any of the hard work, right? I'm just saying, hey, you can do this. Mm-hmm. And when you're able to just give those words to people and what they're able to do then with their life is just, I think it's really inspiring for me as a CEO of a company. And I know it's inspiring for our entire staff. And anybody that I talk to says, holy hell, we need more of this. And I agree, we do.
Yeah. Well, don't sell yourself short either there, Charlie. You're really providing them with that, again, permission and structure and support that, I think a lot of kids just don't have or just don't know that they even need, or that they're missing. So UnCollege does some great stuff. Okay, I know we're at the top of the hour, and I know you're very busy, so let me ask you one final question if I could. On this podcast, I explore how parents can raise rebels, where we're allowing our kids to go and seek out those answers for themselves, right? How do we help give kids the perspective on what's possible outside of the status quo to help them seek more meaningful lives? What advice can you give to parents or to kids who might be listening on how to become a successful rebel in life?
Tell them that you love them more often than you probably already do, and let them know that you have their backs. That's it.
I love it. Short and sweet.
That's it.
I love it. Okay, if people want to find you online, contact you, I'm definitely going to link up to everything. Where can people go to do that?
Cool. You can go to UnCollege.org and you can find out more about our program. And you're more than welcome to email me directly. My email is charlie@uncollege.org.
That's fantastic. Charlie Taby is the CEO at UnCollege. Charlie, UnCollege just feels like a program that you guys roll up your sleeves to help students put some real thought and exploration to find their why, and what they choose to pursue in life. And I really think that it's a lot of common sense in a lot of ways, and also just truly missing from the process for young students. So thank you so much for what you do and your team at UnCollege, and also for taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with me today. I really appreciate it.
Of course, Paul. I really appreciate it too. Thanks so much for having me on.
All right, for sure. All right, Charlie. Good luck with everything. I'll talk to you soon. Okay. By sharing these stories, my hope is that it provides you with information and perhaps some motivation to help you with your family's journey to raise your kids to take ownership in their future and to be courageous in living the lives that they want to live. The show notes for today's episode are over at raisingrebellion.com. And if you're enjoying the show, I'd of course appreciate it if you help spread the word or left a review over at iTunes to help others find the show as well. Very grateful as always for you being here. And until next time, go Rebs.